A reading from the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11, the exemplary faith of our ancestors. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the conviction of realities that are unseen. For this, our ancestors were attested. By faith, we understand that the ages were created by a word from God, so that from the invisible, the visible world came to be. In faith, Abel offered God a better sacrifice than Cain, and for that, he was approved as righteous when God himself approved his gifts. He is dead, but by his faith, he still speaks. Through faith, Enoch was taken up so that he did not experience death. He was no more because God had taken him up. Before he was taken up, he was attested as having pleased God. Now, without faith, it is impossible to please God, since anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and rewards those who seek him. In faith, Noah, when he had been alerted by God to something that had never been seen before, foresightedly built an ark to save his family. Through faith, he passed judgment on the world and received the heritage of righteousness according to faith. In faith, Abraham obeyed the call to set out for a place which he was to receive as an inheritance. And he set out without knowing where he was going. By faith, he sojourned in the promised land as a stranger, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the well-founded city, of which God was the designer and builder. In faith, Sarah also, in spite of being barren and beyond the age of conception, was made able to receive the seed to bear a child, because she believed that he who had made the promise was faithful. Because of this, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the grains of sand on the seashore, which cannot be counted. In faith, all these died before receiving the promises, but seeing them from afar, welcoming them and recognizing that they were only strangers and nomads on earth. People who say such things make it quite plain that they are seeking a homeland. If they had meant the country from which they came, they would have had opportunity to return to it. But in fact, they were longing for a better homeland, a heavenly one. That is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, since he has made ready a city for them. By faith, Abraham, when put to the test, offered up Isaac. Although he was waiting to receive the promise, he was prepared to sacrifice his only son, of whom he had been told, "Through Isaac will your name be carried on." He reckoned that God had the power even to raise the dead, and from there, figuratively speaking, he did receive Isaac back. In faith, this same Isaac gave his blessing to Jacob and Esau for the future. In faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons, bowed in reverence as he leant on his staff. In faith, Joseph, when he was about to die, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave instructions about his own remains. In faith, Moses, when he was born, was kept hidden by his parents for 3 months because they saw that he was a fine child. They were not afraid of the king's edict. It was in faith that when he was grown up, Moses refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter and preferred to be ill-treated in company with God's people rather than to enjoy the transitory pleasures of sin. He considered that the humiliations offered to the anointed were more precious than the treasures of Egypt, because he had his eyes fixed on the reward. In faith, he left Egypt without fear of the king's anger. He persevered like someone who could see the invisible. In faith, he kept the Passover and sprinkled the blood to prevent the destroyer from touching any of their firstborn sons. In faith, they crossed the Red Sea as if it were dry land, while the Egyptians, trying to do the same, were drowned. In faith, the walls of Jericho fell down when they had been circled for 7 days. In faith, Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed with the unbelievers because she had welcomed the spies. What more shall I say? Time will fail me if I give an account of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets. Through faith, they conquered kingdoms, acted righteously, and earned the promises. They closed the mouths of lions, quenched raging fires, escaped the blades of swords. They were powerful in weakness, became strong in battle, turned away the attacks of foreigners. Women received their dead by resurrection. Others were tortured, refusing to accept release in order to gain a better resurrection. Some bore mockery and flogging, or even bonds and prison. They were stoned, or sawn in half, or killed by the sword. They were homeless and went around in skins of sheep and goats. They were in want and hardship and maltreated. They were too good for the world, and they wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and ravines. All these were attested through their faith, but they did not receive what was promised, since God foresaw for us something better, and they were not to reach perfection except with us. The word of the Lord.